Oh my god, that was more disabled than I've ever done it.
She just wants to be beautiful, she goes.
Hello beautiful humans, my name is Paige and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome, I hope you're doing very well. So today I thought I'd sit down and almost do like a little story time, get to know me sort of thing. A couple of months ago, or about a month ago on my channel, I did a 10 things you might not know about me video, and I really enjoyed that because, as I said in that, I felt like I've been making videos but I haven't really had a chance to kind of explain myself and who I am and all of that. So I really enjoyed that video, and one thing that people have been asking me to do is a what's my disability video, because obviously you guys know I'm disabled, you can see that, but I've never really gone into what my disability is and how I got my disability. So I thought it might be fun, if that's the right word, or just interesting to sit down and tell you my story of me wobbliness and how that happened. So that's what I'm going to do today. If you're not interested in finding out and you don't really care why, then don't have to watch this video. There's plenty more on this channel. Go watch some of them as well. But if you are intrigued to see what happens and my story and my disability, then just keep on watching this video. So I don't actually know if I've said what my disability is on camera before. I must have. I've definitely said it before. If you don't know though, I have cerebral palsy. Now cerebral palsy, or CP as I'm going to call it in this video, mainly because it's a lot shorter and a lot easier to say, is essentially brain damage. CP is caused, I think, almost entirely by lack of oxygen during childbirth, and that is what happened with my mum. So my mum had a pretty standard pregnancy, I think, as far as I'm aware, up until I decided that I wanted to be born. I came into this world super prematurely, so I was meant to be born around Christmas time, and in fact my birthday is the 9th of October. And obviously because I was so premature, there were complications, and I don't know exact details. For the privacy of my mum, I don't want to go into too much detail, but what I do know is she went into labour with me and I was being a little shit. Like, I wasn't coming out properly, I was getting all stuck and whatnot. My breathing was really laboured, I wasn't getting enough oxygen. So instead of mum being able to give birth naturally, she had to go for an emergency C-section. Now during that, for a period of time, I think for me it was a couple of minutes, the supply to oxygen to me was cut off and I couldn't breathe for a period of, I think it was about a minute. Like, I think it was about a minute, I'm not entirely sure, it could have been less, I'm not entirely sure, but a significant amount of time, which then caused brain damage, what CP essentially is. And cerebral palsy can affect people in so many different ways, from the smallest limp to not being able to speak. Sometimes it even can cause mental disabilities. Every case is different. I don't think I've met two people the same with cerebral palsy. There are characteristics, but there are some really fun like little things that I've noticed, obviously having cerebral palsy myself and growing up with people with cerebral palsy around me and stuff my mum said. But there are certain characteristics, and I like to play spot the cerebral palsy person, because you can spot a person with cerebral palsy a mile off. My mum is like a bloodhound. When there's someone with cerebral palsy around, she spots them like 20 miles down the street, and she'll just be like, they have cerebral palsy, and I'll be like, how do you know that? There are little characteristics which we all have in common, which I was convinced we don't, but we totally do. But it's so individual to each person, and it's very dependent on how long you can't breathe for, what part of your brain shuts down, and all of that. So for me, when I lost oxygen or when I couldn't breathe, at first they didn't really think it affected me too much, because they got me breathing again, I was crying, I seemed happy. Apart from being a really small baby because I was premature, I'll see if I can find a photo and pop it up here. I was like a little transparent seahorse. I was so small. My mum was saying to me like they had to buy premature baby nappies to put me in, and they were so big. Like, they were stupidly big for me. I was just a very small, very fragile baby. I made up for it in the years to come. So they put any kind of illnesses and weaknesses I had, because I was a very sick child, just down to the fact that I was so premature and so early. I, like many other prem babies, had my ups and downs, and I think I was in and out of hospital for a good couple of months before I was allowed home. I was allowed home, and everything was pretty normal. Apart from me being quite a sick baby, everything was normal. Like, there was no signs that I had cerebral palsy as such. I was just, you know, a little baby who was a little bit poorly and just had to kind of get her strength back. From what I know, the only real first thing that my parents knew about me having CP or having cerebral palsy was that I wasn't developing as I should. Babies should hit certain milestones by certain points. Not spot on, every child's different, but there's kind of an acceptable window of a couple of months to a couple of years where kids just start hitting certain points, and if they don't hit those points, e.g. walking, talking, motor functions, stuff like that, then it may be that there's something wrong. It totally may not be. Like, kids are so different, but if your kid's 3 and still isn't walking, then maybe there's something that should be looked into. And that's exactly what my parents started to notice. By the time I was 2, I still wasn't able to sit up unaided. I still couldn't hold my weight and sit up like other 2-year-olds could. I still didn't want to walk. I wanted to crawl. My mum and my dad would put me on my feet and I would just sit back down. And they were like, well, she could just be a really lazy baby, which in my adulthood now makes total sense. But there could be something wrong. I got taken for tests and they found out that I had cerebral palsy. Now, my CP, on a scale of it, is pretty mild. My CP affects mainly my right side of my body. I'm going to show you a little test I showed people to try and explain how it affects. So my left hand is pretty normal, if that's the word we want to use. You know, I have complete function in it. I can do all of these things. I can do that thing. Oh, I really had to concentrate then. I can do that thing to test for your fine motor skills and coordination. This hand, on the other hand, is not as coordinated. So if I tried to do this again, you're gonna see one, oh my god, that was more disabled than I've ever done it. 1, I can't reach these 2 fingers together, and 2, it's just shit. Look at that. It's just, the concentration that takes me to do is insane. The movements are a lot stiffer, a lot more laboured, they're not as smooth, and that's pretty much the same sort of story for the whole right side of my body. Speech is a thing that can be affected, and like I've said earlier on in this video, some people with cerebral palsy are born completely without speech. However, my mum picked up on something recently which I've never noticed and I don't know how to feel about it. My speech is slurred sometimes if I get particularly excited or particularly like overwhelmed. My CP voice comes out. Which is so weird, and I think I just did it then. Like, I can now hear it sometimes, and it's kind of this little twang where it just kind of slurs a little bit. It's very odd. It's very, very odd. I actually forget how disabled I am. I remember once, and I get it constantly now I edit videos, where I kind of forget that this is me. This chair is a thing people can see that is different from other people. I forget that. I forget that I'm disabled almost sometimes because I'm just so used to it. I can stand and I can walk a little bit. I can also now sit up unaided. Yes! And for the most part, I'm extraordinarily lucky that I am very independent. I self-care and I pretty much live day to day as any other person would, except stairs are a bit of a pain in the ass. Personally for me, I found that my cerebral palsy has been more of a blessing than a curse. Like I said, CP can range so dramatically, and I'm very lucky that the only thing that I feel is really affected is my mobility. I have my speech, I have my cognitive abilities. I am very, very, very lucky in that respect, and for me it's been a blessing because it has taught me so many values in life and not to take things for granted without getting too deep and like meaningful. Like, it really has, I don't know where I'd be if I wasn't disabled. I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I have had. I've been to a great school, I've made some amazing friends, I've played international sport for my country, and they're things I wouldn't have done if I hadn't been disabled. So I'm very, very, very grateful. A bit more about CP in general and how it affects me day to day. Obviously, I am in a wheelchair. Not everyone with cerebral palsy is in a wheelchair. I actually walked for the first 14 years of my life. I had like a little K walker, and basically it's like a granny frame but backwards, and I would use that to walk. But on top of my cerebral palsy, I have other issues and other disabilities as well. I have bone growth issues. My bones are just a bit wonky basically. And I was born with a dislocated hip joint. Through no fault of anyone else, it was just, it didn't form properly. So by the time I was 14, I was in incredible pain with my hip and I couldn't walk on it any longer. We had to kind of make a decision whether I wanted to carry on trying to be able to walk. But likelihood is that I would have had to have 24/7 care because I would have had someone to carry things for me. I wouldn't have been able to like even move and hold a cup of tea, so I wouldn't be able to make a cup of tea for myself. Or I went in a wheelchair and sacrificed the ability to walk. However, I could be so much more independent, and that is what I chose. That is really, for me, day to day, that is how I'm affected. I have to live as a wheelchair user. I have to make sure I can get in places. I have to make sure that I've got enough charge on my wheelchair, which I never have. I'm very happy with that decision. However, there are points in my life where I thought, well, what would it be like if I decided to carry on walking? I know I'd be a lot skinnier. I know that I would probably be a lot healthier, but would I be as independent? I don't know. It's not a question I can answer, and it's not something I'll ever really know. I couldn't imagine my life not being disabled, and I am grateful for the opportunities it has given me. Everyone's going to get days where they're just like, oh, I wish I could do this or I wish I could do that, regardless of disability. However, you just got to make the most of what you got, and that's what I try to do. However you look at disability, however you choose to live your life with a disability, things are going to have to be slightly different. There's always going to be something you have to do slightly different, and it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means the way you approach it and the way you look at it has to be slightly different, and I find that fascinating because it differs from person to person. And being able to document my experiences with cerebral palsy and the things that I do differently and the things that I work around is so much fun. That disability, do you mind, children? Chill. It's not something I really want to define me, but it is something that I feel is important to talk about and to tell you guys, and to kind of hopefully give you a bit of background to it, so if you are curious you aren't anymore, or if you are, just ask me questions in the comments down below. I much prefer people just asking me because I find that is more curiosity rather than disdain, and that makes me really happy. So if I haven't answered any questions regarding my disability that you are interested in, then just let me know down below and I will try and answer them the best I can. So that, guys, is the video. Hopefully it made sense. I know it was a bit rambly. It was more kind of a rambly this is me sort of thing, but I wanted to do it to share that part of you with me. Share that part of you with, no. I hope it gave you a bit of information maybe, and you found it a little bit helpful if you didn't know anything about cerebral palsy. I really hope you liked it. If you did, then do give it a thumbs up because that lets me know that I'm doing all the good and dandy things. And if you haven't, why not subscribe? Because we've got some more videos coming up. I'm on a roll at the moment. I know I've said that before, but I think I'm actually on a roll with the whole filming. So subscribe because there will be more videos coming up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember, I have been me, so please always be you, and I will see you very soon for another video. I can't do my usual thing because I'm too far away from the camera. I just have to kind of Wingardium Leviosa it. That's not the one that ends stuff. Bye.